Hi, welcome to another edition of Current Affairs Taiwan. This is Donovan Smith, and I'm Michael Turton. And we have another great lineup of events to discuss today. So, both of us had a really good time reading Nathan Baddow, the political scientist over here at the Academica Sinica, who is an amazing analyst of polls and Taiwan politics and has been here since the 1990s.
Yeah.
What did you think of that piece about, 6 Astonishing Months that Nathan wrote? That's on Frozen Garlic, the blog, Frozen Garlic.
I thought it was fantastic. He broke down the polls. He really showed, there's a bunch of things that I thought were particularly enlightening. I knew before that he was, the Go was picking up some younger voters.
That's Terry Guo, right?
Yeah.
The former head of Foxconn, Guo Taiming.
But he really, that really popped in the way that he analyzed it. There's a whole series of things that he went through that were just like, they either confirmed things which I suspected but didn't have any numbers behind.
Right.
That was the surprise, was how strong the youth vote was. I knew he had more support because I'd seen some polls before which suggested it. But his analysis took it, several steps further. We'll get back to this in a minute, I do think that he may be wrong about one thing. The entire article, I agreed with everything. I was awestruck, but we'll talk about this in a minute, about the strategic third, if somebody falls into last place, that those supporters are going to vote strategically. And they might not, and I think it depends on certain factors. But let's talk about that in a sec. What was your take from the article?
Well, I thought it was kind of interesting how the numbers showed what we've been saying, that Han's base is very solid, but isn't expanding, and that if Guo Taiming runs, they aren't going to switch, especially if the KMT dumps Han and tries to promote Guo as their man. Then those voters just say, forget it, we aren't coming out for the KMT, they'll hate that. So I thought that was very interesting data that he had gotten out of My Formosa, which is probably the only poll that has been polling exactly the same way for a long period of time. So I think his, actually I'm not that worried about some incredible thing happening to Tsai over the last few months. This is now her third presidential election. She has been thoroughly vetted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if there was anything huge, it would already have come out. And so, and the marriage equality thing, the Hong Kong thing, a lot of things are now working in her factor. That we were just remarking, the Taiwan independence crowd.
Yep.
Those people that are way out on the fringe, they seem to have quieted down in the last few weeks.
Yeah, one of them came out and said that they thought it was going to be easy for Tsai to win, and also that they wanted to put marriage equality on hold until there was more consensus in society.
Well, they are old.
Yes. The way I put it, it's really good that the elderly find hobbies.
Yes. If only their hobby was doing square dances in the public park at 6 in the morning like everyone else.
Not forming political parties to challenge Tsai Ing-wen, or the DPP. Because they all want to get legislative seats. Who knows? Maybe they'll get one or two or something. But I would have thought the TSU would have a better chance than either of these two new deep green parties. But
who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
It depends on who they run and where they run them and all that kind of stuff. So we don't know any of that yet.
Yeah.
So it's September 2nd today? No,
yeah, 2nd. I think
it's the 2nd.
Yeah,
it's the 2nd. So Guo Taiming has 15 more days to announce
if he's going to run as
to formally file as an independent, and so does Wen-je.
Yeah.
So the next 2 weeks, everything will become very clear.
Yeah.
And it's looking more and more. Everyone is remarking that Wen-je, the mayor of Taipei, who's formed his own party, of course, is not going to run.
It's not looking like he's going to run. He's openly backed Terry Go repeatedly, Guo Taiming repeatedly. So I don't see that happening. He may change his mind. You never know. But he's running out of time. I think he really, he doesn't have that much time. Meanwhile, the KMT is making noises about kicking Guo Taiming or Terry Go out. The interesting thing is that they've come out and they've said if he starts raising signatures himself, because other groups have been raising them for him, if he makes the move to go out and start raising signatures, then they'll kick him out of the KMT. However, meanwhile, and he hasn't even declared he's running. Meanwhile, Wang Jinping is already running for president.
And still not kicked out.
And still not kicked out. They may kick him out as well, which sets up a whole other stuff. But you'll notice there's a lot in the last couple of weeks. There's a lot more clamor to dump Han, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon.
In the last few weeks, yeah, it's really because everyone's realized, as we were saying, way back in April, right, that he's never going to expand out of that 30, 31, 32, 33% that he has.
Yeah.
He's got no appeal, and as if to nail that down, just today or yesterday, he came out with the line. He said, "You Taiwan independence voters, you just go vote for Tsai Ing-wen. I don't want your votes. Not you middle of the roaders. I really don't care whether you're Taidu or not. Please come vote for me." No, he lives in an ideological bubble, just like Hong Xiu-zu in 2016.
Yep.
Same stuff. So I really can't see him having any kind of broad-based appeal.
I mean, the thing is, he's got 20-some-odd%, I think. He's got a coalition of two groups of supporters. One is people who are absolutely dead for him.
Right, the fanatics.
The fanatics and the deep Han fans. And then a handful of, a certain percentage of the population that will vote KMT no matter what. And it looks like that is 20-some-odd% because in the three-way races, Go peels off some of the deeper blues. So he's left with, if there's going to be a three-way race, it looks to me that Han Kuo-yu he's got a real hardcore 20-some-odd%. So the only way that he's going to be knocked out is, if the KMT tried to dump him, there'd be a revolt.
Yeah.
Because he's still got that. He's still got a large enough support base that he's still competitive.
Yeah.
Because most of the three-way races have right now Tsai now a little over 30, and both Go and Han in the upper 20s. They're all within like 3-4 percentage points. So all three of them are competitive at this point.
Right, but my Formosa poll had Tsai almost at 40.
Yeah, in the three-way.
In the three-way,
but if you look at,
they're slightly green, yeah.
Right, and Bato's poll of polls, they're all still they're still viable. And so if they were to dump Han at this stage, they would have a revolt on their hands. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is the only way I think I can see that happening is there would have to be a scandal, there'd have to be some revelation about Han Kuo-yu that was so shocking beyond negligent homicide.
which we already have.
Beating the shit out of a fellow legislator and hospitalizing.
Which we already have.
But beyond drinking and womanizing and gambling, which he says is all in the past. It's...
Well, technically, the past is all the time before the present, right? So,
yeah, good point. So, but you never know. I mean, there's a lot. There's been a piece floating around over the last week or so, talking, going into more detail. We already knew he had gangster connections, going into further detail into it. So I don't see him being easily replaced.
No.
So the dump Han movement right now, I think, has no traction. There'd have to be a scandal so scary that it would actually jolt a lot of those either diehard Han or diehard KMT people.
Yeah.
So I don't think before the deadline, Terry Go, Guo Taiming, he's going to run as an independent. It looks like he's not going to be on the KMT ticket. Things may change farther down. We don't know, but I'd say in the short term, Han's the KMT guy. They're not going to dump him. The only candidate that the KMT, I think right now, the one move they could make that would totally upend everything is if they could convince Ho-Yo-i to be their candidate and dump Han. That would totally upend the race because he's more popular than Go or...
Probably Tsai Ing-wen.
Maybe even more
popular than her.
But you notice that Terry Go's fishing around Ho-Yo-i's older brother as a potential VP candidate. Do you see that?
He's going to insulate himself from that. Yeah.
Native Taiwanese from Jiayi in a high-profile medical position in Kaohsiung.
Yeah, that's ideal.
He just hits all these demographics.
Yeah.
And, of course, for some reason recently it's been the vogue to go for, medical professionals and business people. So,
Well, they've got a long history of leading politics in Taiwan, right?
Yeah.
Doctors? Sure.
Yeah.
And they're still respected by the populace.
Yeah.
So, well, I think one of the interesting things in Bato's piece was that the way Terry Guo took way more votes from Tsai than he did from Han.
Yeah, I thought that was very
I thought that was very
It was
interesting.
mostly younger voters. I thought
Yeah.
it was very interesting.
Well, Tanner Greer told us a few weeks
Yeah.
ago when he was here.
yeah.
So, but let's keep in mind two other things, right? First of all, Tsai Ing-wen just started her campaign this week.
Mm-hmm.
And second, Guo Taimin has not started running, so he is not getting the level of scrutiny yet.
Yeah.
So as Nathan Battle points this out, it's going to be a very different Terry Guo in January than the one we're looking at right now.
Absolutely.
I can't wait till he tries to make the rhetorical move of, I am the real KMT and I am Taiwanese at the same time. Because he's going to have to say that if he's going to capture the middle-of-the-road voter.
Well, here's the thing, though, is that might actually work. Because if he can get, if Kuo-yu, I mean, people now are talking about like it's a done deal. That Wang Jinping and Terry Go, and Kuo-yu are going to back him. Now, we don't know for sure. That's not a done deal. People are talking about it like it's a done deal. We've been talking about it as a possibility for a long time.
Right.
It makes a lot of sense. But there's still, it's still not a formal thing. It's still not, it doesn't look like they've completely all committed yet. They're fishing around it. But this is a huge if, but if they can pull it off, get these three, you've got the pro-localization Wang. He can bring in a lot of light blue Taiwanese. Mostly, not so much because of his popularity, but through the get out the vote ground
game.
He's got connections with political operatives all over the country. Even if he doesn't get the patronage factions in directly, he can still get a lot of the political operatives.
Right.
Just simply hire them.
Right.
Right? With Terry Go's money. Kuo-yu gives Terry Go a bump in the polls. So if you've got that ground game getting out
And a
vote,
veneer of greenness.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, so Terry Go, I think that to make himself viable, he needs to stick to his message of, I'm a successful businessman and I know what makes an economy work and what will make Taiwan rich again, and which undermines Han Kuo-yu because he actually has a successful company. And number two is he takes the old school KMT line of opposing China and not cozying up to China, which he's been doing, by the way. You'll notice he's going after the China Times Want group,
Right.
Robert Tsai.
Yeah.
And
He's old school ROC.
He's old school ROC, and they're anti-communist. Now, of course, this is deeply suspicious because to be a successful businessman in China, to the degree that he is, he's one of the most successful businessmen in China, you have to have good relations with the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
Let me repeat that, folks. To be that successful of a businessman in China, you have to have really good relations with the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
Jack Ma got bumped, for crying out loud. And he was a Communist Party member, bought the South China Morning Post for them, and still they didn't want him running the company. So there's a lot of suspicion there. And Kuo-yu, I think, was dead right when he said, he's going to have to divest a lot of his Chinese businesses before anyone's going to trust him.
Right. Even then, everyone's going to remember.
Right. Now, here's the thing, is, it could be that his good relationship with the Chinese Communist Party is not at all ideological, it's purely business. He just said whatever they wanted to hear. He went about his business. He might loathe them for all we know. But he's going to have to divest himself of at least a good chunk of those holdings, I think, before people are going to feel comfortable.
Right. And then the other thing that we've often mentioned is his personality. He is a testy old man. And
he's getting smoother, though.
Yeah, he's learning. He's definitely learning.
A very bumpy start with his harem comments and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And shouting at the DPP. Was it legislator or city council or whatever at that?
That was what's her name?
Oh, was it Kola Sutaka?
No. It was Xiaomi Kim.
Yeah, that's what it was. He was shouting at her and losing his temper, but he hasn't lost his temper in a while.
Not in a while.
He hasn't made any
But
outrageous gaps.
he's not running. He's not being challenged every day.
Yeah.
Everyone is sucking up to him. And so things are going to change when he formally announces.
Yeah, and to get back to this point, I mean, we're kind of beating it to death, but, once the DPP, Taiwan, literally, I just saw the news today, or was it yesterday, that, she's signed off on 500 campaign personnel at a big closed-door conclave. And so the campaign now is just about to begin. The DPP has arrayed their troops. They're heading out to the field now. And they're going to go after Go and Han mercilessly. And, she's been vetted, like you pointed out. She's been vetted and vetted and vetted and vetted. And for crying out loud, she's the kind of person who reads books at a KTV.
Yeah.
So she's pretty safe from that, except for a government scandal, which that could easily
happen.
And so, meanwhile, Terry Go and Han Kuo-yu are going to get pounded mercilessly by the DPP. Han Kuo-yu is a soft target, except for with his really core base.
Right.
And the thing is, the press has already basically peeled off anybody who was, superficially enthusiastic about him. They've already done that for the DPP, and the DPP hasn't even started trying yet. And then Terry Go, there's a lot in that man's history.
Yeah, and Han, he just keeps talking. Not only did he make that comment this week about the independence people, but we had a terrible accident. A Filipino factory worker in Miaoli dumped hydrofluoric acid on herself, quite by accident, and she died. And then, what did Han say? He could have dealt with this in many ways, but he said, when the phoenix flies away, large number of chickens pile in, comparing those workers to the migrant workers to the chickens who've piled in after the Taiwanese phoenixes have left.
Yeah, moved to China or overseas.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But that was widely circulated in the Filipino community. My Filipino girlfriend sent it to me. Mm-hmm. And people underestimate how, one of the things I've learned from dating a Filipina is there's piles of Taiwanese who are married to Filipino women. Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of thing that's going to circulate. It's the kind of thing that people in his generation think. They call Filipinos Marias, and they look down on them. But it's not the kind of thing that if you're the presidential candidate you want to say. Mm-hmm. And if you think about the way that Guo Taimin has behaved, and also Han Kuo-yu's constant flow of these comments, Taiwan never says things like that.
No.
And there's nothing you can really point to her and say, can you believe she actually said that? Like Ing-wen's comments about educating the savage Aborigines, or, remember that remark? We're going to bring you in and civilize you.
Man. Yeah.
She never says stuff like that. She's very alive to that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, she is a truly gifted diplomat. I mean, she's a very accomplished diplomat, just professionally. But she really has a very tight rein on what she says. Except she always finishes every sentences with, "Hang." Every single sentence when she's talking to the press. Hang. And she ends every sentence. It's, other than that.
This week, the thing that Thai PhD thing is still circulating.
Yes.
It's like Obama's Kenyan birth certificate. It's ridiculous. And unfortunately, there's a U.S. blogger who's picked that up and is pushing it on all the Taiwan groups. It's unacceptable. She's threatened to sue them now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like on Taiwan Daily News in English, I let him post and leave it be. In response to people saying, well, take it down, I said, well, technically, it's just a series of questions which are not actually necessarily technically wrong. The latest thing is that it was co-written by somebody who didn't have a PhD or something. I don't know. Anyway.
They keep making up stories.
Yeah, but but it's I don't know if they're making it up or not. The thing that just blows my mind is this seems such a small scandal. It's so even if it were true, it's so irrelevant because she got the PhD. The university's confirmed it. Everything, there may have been some weird stuff with the paperwork or who advised her.
It just got lost. There's nothing. It's absolutely normal for this kind of thing to happen.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a non-story. Let's move on.
But it's still going to be circulated. So
right.
Watch for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Wen-je, the former mayor of Kaohsiung, who Tsai Ing-wen plucked out before the election and brought up to become what is she now, the Secretary General?
Something like that.
Yeah, she's high up in the
It's a high
DPP party.
position, yeah.
Wen-je came out today, so she has weight. Came out today and called for a Tsai Ing-wen Lai Chinda. That's William Lai, who ran against her in the primary. She called for a Tsai Lai ticket, which has a nice ring in a way because people eat Tsai Lai mi, right? And Tsai Lai mi. So it could be good, it could be bad, but
Yeah, and meat can be used for fans.
right.
So there you go.
So we could be Tsai Lai mi.
Yes, there we go. I still don't like the whole La Mei thing.
No, that's
La
ridiculous.
Mei thing. That just no.
But the point is, when someone of Wen-je's weight says, "We want this ticket," then there's a high likelihood that it will happen.
Yes, and you're referring to weight as, and she's a political heavyweight, not the kind of weight that we have.
No, the kind of weight that is
which
piling up
thankfully
there.
The podcast people can't see.
Notice we're in dark colors.
Yes.
Please do not use a three-dimensional visual system on your television when you view this.
Yes, yes. So we encourage you to go to the podcast version right now.
So anyway, another thing in the news this week was the Solomon Islands.
Yeah. I've been super busy the last couple of days, so I haven't really followed the last few days closely, but I was watching it real closely up until a few days ago.
Yeah, they set up a commission.
What's going on?
They set up a commission to explore the idea.
But they said they were going to make their decision 100 days plus ago, and it's already passed.
People are now commenting that it could happen right away.
And then there was a bunch of people, like a group of legislators or something, came out in support of Taiwan.
Yeah.
And it seems, it doesn't seem like there's I don't know what's going to happen.
It's the kind of thing that is actually not really very important, since we'll continue to have relations with the Solomons no matter which side they recognize.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing that the KMT can use to bash Tsai Ing-wen if it actually occurs.
Yes.
So,
and then the DPP will counter with relations with the United States and Japan are better than
ever,
pretty much ever been. And then the KMT will counter, but everything's gone really sour with China, which is true. And relations with the United States and Japan are about as good as they've ever been, which is true.
Let's remember, there's probably people out there, especially in the U.S. government, who are thinking, if we get Guo Taiming in here, if we get Terry Guo in here, we can have a nice conservative anti-communist guy. But let's not forget, okay, that the KMT hates Japan, and Ma Ying-jeou spent 8 years irritating relations with Japan and ultimately peeving his U.S. It's peeving the U.S. as well. Yeah. So it's dangerous to think that Guo Taiming is going to be an improvement in some way over Tsai Ing-wen. She's already ferociously anti-communist. She's strongly pro-Taiwan. Yeah. She maintains good relations with the U.S. and with Japan. She's ideal. And I hope if any of you in the U.S. government are watching this, that you will recommend that the U.S. support her in the upcoming election.
I'll tell you something interesting.
Yeah?
Tsai Ing-wen for U.S. relations is by far the best option, and with Japan relations, Han Kuo-yu is definitely the worst option by a huge margin. Terry Go is interesting. He bought out Sharp,
right?
So he's got a bunch of ties with Japan. He's got some ties with the United States. He's been doing business basically, and this is something that a lot of people forget, is that while he's got all these investments in China, what they're really doing is supplying primarily the American market.
Right.
So his end customers are primarily Americans.
Right.
So he's actually got a lot of connections in the United States, Japan, and China. And I think this is and he's already started to, he's going to play that up big time. And so he can position himself as the center. Now here's the thing that breaks down. In a lot of ways, he's going to be forced into an either-or choice.
There's no space in the center.
Very little space, I think. There's some, but there's not a lot of room to maneuver. And that margin is narrowing. As relations between the United States and China are becoming, basically the United States is waking up, finally, to what China is. And as the United States is waking up, China's now turning simply hostile and snarling, where before everyone would buy the Chinese line on all kinds of things, and we certainly wouldn't want to hurt the feelings of the Chinese people. Oh no. People are waking up now, so there's a lot more of picking sides. I think is going to happen.
Right, and I think during the election, people are going to confront Guo Taimin with this.
Yeah.
Is Taiwan part of China? Would you accept the 1992 consensus and all this stuff that mainstream voters won't support?
Right.
And so, so he's going to have to find a language, as Ma Ying-jeou actually did with his what was it, the 3 no's and the, Ma worked all that out, and I expect that both Han and Guo are going to try and tread that Ma Ying-jeou path. But this isn't 2008 anymore.
Yeah, it's tougher now.
Yeah.
And he's the post-sunflower movement. I think that there's some of the ground has shifted here, and this is one thing where actually I've disagreed with Nathan Battle on, is he thought that it had changed, and then now he says he thinks he was wrong, and I think it has changed.
Yeah, I think it's changed too.
And I think it's not so much showing up in the polling numbers in huge numbers. There has been a continuing shift toward more pan-green identity, toward more Taiwanese identity, but it hasn't been massive. I think what's happened, and I think this is what the big difference is that post-sunflower, I think that those who identify as Taiwanese, it's become deeper, and they're much more probing in their questions and much harder in their choices. I think that's where the real change
Probably, yeah.
And this is particularly true of younger Taiwanese. I think before the sunflower movement, they kind of identified as Taiwanese. I think post-sunflower movement, that there's no ambiguity anymore. I think that it cleaned out ambiguity in people who might have been in the center.
Right. And what we saw, a few polls came out a while back showing that actually a shift kind of back to a China identity had occurred in the over 40s.
Mm-hmm.
But,
a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit. But now that seems to have been not so big a factor.
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong is a big issue.
Yeah. I honestly feel like with those in their 40s, 50s, early 60s, I think it's sentimentality. I think there's this, they're thinking back on their school days.
Right.
And I think that's
CCK.
It's more nostalgia for a great economy and being young.
Right.
And optimistic than
Right.
it has anything to do with actually wanting to be part of China.
Yeah, if the Chinese troops showed up, they'll fight. Yeah.
I think they would, confronted with the actual reality of the People's Liberation Army. I think that nostalgia is going to look a little weak. Yeah.
Well, the one fun piece of news this week was Hong Xiuzhu is back in the race.
Woohoo!
She's running in Tainan. So, if all else fails, we can always get some amusing news out of the legislative race in Tainan. With Hong there, anything could be said.
Yes, definitely. She's just so entertaining. And Tainan, I mean, she's New Taipei through and through.
Yes, she's an old line mainlander.
Old line mainlander. She's a North mainlander.
They must not care about that seat, or else it's so deep blue.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to look into what this seat is. I haven't really had a chance to do that. And just very briefly, we haven't mentioned the NPP. But I've been giving a lot of thought to what's been going on. What's interesting is what hasn't happened.
Yeah?
When Freddie Lim left, and then a little bit soon after that, Hong Tzu-yong left.
Right.
Handy Chiu stepped down as the party chair.
Right. And then?
Nothing. Here's the interesting thing. There are city councilors all over the country now. They got 17, I believe,
I don't know.
In the last local elections. As far as I know, not one of them is left. Taichung almost had one. She lost by 9 votes.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
By 9 votes. Anyway, but there are NPP city councilors, 17 of them across the country, and not one of them, as far as I know, has left the NPP.
Well, that's good news, actually.
Yeah. So what I think's happening is the party's starting to. What might be happening is the party's starting to solidify around a bigger, like a more clearer ideology. That might be happening. I'm not an insider in the NPP, but that's sort of what it looks like might be the trend here.
We have to get Lev Nachman on the show. Lev, come.
Yes.
Come to Taichung.
Yes. So, I mean, that seems to be one thing. And here's the other thing I also found really interesting. They opened up negotiations with the SDP.
Oh, so again.
Yes.
So they're going to combine.
But I thought it was very interesting because I suspect now that we've got the more ideological purists have kind of won out, the less pragmatic people are winning out in the NPP, and they more resemble the SDP.
Yeah, that's very true.
And
no, this is bad. Then they're going to be a marginalized ideological party. No.
Well, here's an interesting thing to think about.
Okay.
Everybody's been talking about how Huang Guochang wants to run for mayor.
Of course.
Now, I have this sneaking suspicion. It's just a suspicion. I have no proof. But that he might be looking to groups like the SDP, who are basically, I don't think they've ever been outside of Taipei.
No, they've never been outside of Dian District.
Yes. They're Taipei-centric. You know, the Taiwan State Building Party, they're Kaohsiung. They're center-south. They're running a candidate here in Taichung. So they seem to be a center-south thing. The SDP, yeah, they're Dian District. If they've gone farther than where the MRT goes, I'd be shocked, you know. I'm obviously...
It goes to the airport now.
I know. Maybe they've been Italian. Anyway. But yeah, I'm being sarcastic, obviously. But they're very Taipei-centric. So that would make sense. Because here's an interesting thing that I had a conversation with some people from the Trees Party.
Sure.
Another deep Taipei radical party. They get a lot of mainlander support.
Yeah.
It's these parties, the SDP, the NPP, and the Green Party, the Trees Party. A lot of them are mainlanders.
Yeah.
High percentage of mainlanders. And so they appeal in Taipei.
Well,
So I'm wondering if that's where he's going.
it will be interesting if it's a three-way election in the next one.
Yeah. Well,
Taipei
and Kuo
mayor.
won't run again. The other thing is he may try and figure out a way. Now, I know he's slagged off Kuo in the past, but he might be looking for a way, at least there would make some political sense if he could get Kuo to back him. But they're now in two separate different political parties. But the TPP explicitly allows their members to belong to other political parties simultaneously. So, which I thought was an interesting move.
All right.
So, yeah. Anyway.
Well,
so
thanks.
If he can get Kuo to back him as a successor in Taipei, that would make a lot of political sense. Kuo might do it because it would keep it out of the hands of the Blues and the Greens, and that's his goal.
Yeah.
So he might be interested in doing that. If Huang Guochang is set up as Kuo-pi's natural successor, Kuo-pi can train him, give him some backing, his blessing, and a lot of his support base might go with him. Because there is a lot of overlap between the NPP and Kuo Wen-je's supporters.
But if you went back to Nathan Battle's polls, one of the things he pointed out is that Kuo seems to lack the ability to tell his followers where to vote.
Yes, and that's something that I think is a big problem. You'll notice that he for the last few years, he's been coming out and supporting all these independent candidates all around the island, and they all lose.
Yeah.
Consistently. I don't know of any. I mean, maybe one has won, but I haven't seen any.
He's got his personality
Yeah.
cult, basically, and that's it.
But the thing is, it's a Taipei-centric
Yeah.
personality.
It's a young people's.
It's a young people one.
Yeah, so.
Huang Guochang might appeal to those same people.
Well, we'll see.
But we don't know. Who knows? Anyway, it's a long way off before, assuming that Kuo Wen-je does not run for president, I think we've got a long, we've got a few years on the next local election. So lots of things may happen between now and then. All right. So
Thank you very much for listening. Hope to see you again next week.